Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Hub back into the video today, and today we're going to be doing the last mock draft for the 2024 NFL Draft for the Houston Texans. I'm not going to go over a full 7-round mock draft for the Texans, but I'm going to go over their first 4 picks, which does reach all the way to day 3 of the draft. There are 3 days of the draft. You got tomorrow night, Thursday, first round. Then Friday, you have rounds 2 and 3, which the Texans, you know how many picks round 1 they did trade out of the first round. They originally had pick 23. They traded out of the first round, which did lead them to getting trading for Stephon Diggs. And so they have a couple picks in day 2. They have pick 42 and pick 59 on day 2. They also have pick 86 in the 3rd round on day 2. So they have three selections that they will make on day 2: 42, 59, and 86. So 2 second-rounders and 1 third-rounder. So that should be exciting for the Texans. And let's go over. I'm gonna go over 4 players I want to see the Houston Texans select in this draft early on, in the first 2 days, as the Texans have a couple draft picks on day 2. And then there's one guy that I'd like to see the Texans go grab on day 3 and round 4. Let's go over it. So, starting off with the Texans' first pick, which is pick 42. And the guy I'd really like to see the Texans go pick up a pick 42 is Peyton Watson, a linebacker from NC State. He's a guy who's projected to go to the Texans at pick 42. If you look at I think it's like Tankathon or something. He had 138 tackles last season with NC State. He is 6'4", 233 pounds. He had 6 sacks, 6 passes deflected, 3 interceptions, 1 forced fumble. If the Texans ended up drafting Peyton Watson at 42, him coming in, he would be the biggest linebacker on the team. If you look at height, I mean, Danielle Hunter's 6'5", but he's not going to be playing linebacker for the Texans next year. He'll be playing defensive end for the Texans next to Will Anderson. He's just listed as a linebacker. If, listed linebackers, Peyton Watson would be coming into the Houston Texans as the 2nd tallest linebacker for the Houston Texans, at weight being 233 pounds, one of the largest, one of the largest, if you look at weight, Texans linebackers on the team. He's huge, and he's a really good player as well. He's great at getting pressure to the quarterback. I think he could be a really nice NFL player, and I had a lot of hype for a guy like Christian Harris coming out of Texas A&M and the Texans drafting him. I feel the same way about Peyton Watson potentially being a great player in this league, whether the Texans draft him or someone else gets him. I think he should be a really good player. So I'm excited to see if the Texans potentially go out there and draft a linebacker with their first pick. I think first draft pick for the Texans, it's either going to be a linebacker or it's going to be a defensive lineman early on. Now, pick 59, I don't have the Houston Texans going to defensive lineman. I have the Houston Texans going out there and getting themselves a safety. I think that could be one of the best fits in the 2nd round with your 2nd pick. I know we all want a defensive lineman. That would be great for this Houston Texans team, but I think they need a safety really bad as well. I mean, they have Jimmy Ward and they have Jalen Petrie. But after that, Jalen Petrie had some struggles last year in 2023. Jimmy Ward had some injury problems and is getting old. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing the Texans go out there and drafting one of the best safeties in this draft from Minnesota, and that is Tyler Nuban. Tyler Nuban, who with Minnesota last year had 53 tackles with 1 sack, 5 interceptions with 1 forced fumble, and 4 passes deflected, is the first safety that is expected to go in this draft. He's the first guy that right now is supposed to be drafted at that safety position, and I really would like to see the Texans early on go out there and get a safety, and that's potentially what I'd like to see the Texans go do. And then with their next pick, I think that's where you go out there and you get yourself a defensive lineman, and I think this player should be available from Texas. Since he did get into some trouble right before this draft, I don't think this will be a long issue for him. I'm talking about Tristan Sweat. I'm a Longhorns fan, would love to see this move happen. Here's where you get your defensive lineman. Right now, he's projected to go in the 80 to 85 area. The Texans have a pick at 86. Maybe Tavondre Sweat is one of those guys the Texans potentially trade up for, but Sweat played most of the season last year with Texas. He had 45 tackles. He had 2 sacks. He had 4 passes deflected. Also, hey, this could be a J.J. Watt, a potential J.J. Watt type of draftee right here, because just like when the Texans brought in J.J. Watt, I'm not comparing I'm not comparing Tavondre Sweat to J.J. at all, but Texas, the Longhorns did use Tavondre Sweat in their offense. I can't remember if J.J. Watt was used in Wisconsin's offense at all, but if you guys remember when J.J. was early in his career, the Texans used him as like kind of a tight end and would throw the ball to him. Now, Texas did the same thing with Sweat. They threw the ball to him every now and then. They even sometimes handed the ball off to him. I don't know if the Texans would explore options with Tavondre Sweat in that potential area as well, just like the Longhorns did, and just like the Texans did years ago when the Texans did that with J.J. Watt. Now, D'Amico Ryans is our head coach, and he was a part of the team when he was a part of the Houston Texans, I believe, when J.J. Watt was playing tight end and defensive end for the Houston Texans. So maybe it is something D'Amico Ryans, if D'Amico Ryans looks at the film, maybe he'll look at it and potentially throw off the defense a little bit. And then the last pick I have the Houston Texans making, I believe this is necessary in the 4th round with pick 123 in your first selection on day 3 to go out there and get a running back. I really like Joe Mixon. I think he's a great running back for us, and he's signed an extension, but he is getting older and he's wearing down just a little bit, and he's had some legal issues and behavior issues in the last couple years outside of football. So I think let's just say Joe Mixon stays healthy, he doesn't wear down, and he doesn't have legal issues or behavior issues outside of the football, you still don't really have a nice running back too, in my opinion. Damen Pierce is a nice running back, and I thought he showed some really good stuff for the Houston Texans in 2022, but last year he was not that at all. And so I just don't trust the Texans. I don't trust him being the running back and the backup running back. And if, God forbid, Joe Mixon gets in legal trouble or gets hurt or doesn't play well, then who's going to step up? And I just don't really see that being Damen Pierce. Now, Jalen Wright, a guy from Tennessee, who I would love to see the Texans draft in the 3rd or 4th round, is a great running back. He had a great season with Tennessee this year. He had 137 carries with 1,013 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. He hardly turns the ball over. He only fumbled 1 time in the 2023 season with Tennessee, and that fumble was a lost fumble. He had 22 receptions for 141 receiving yards, so he's not a terrible receiving back either. I think he could be a really solid running back, a backup running back for this Houston Texans team, and a potential starter if Joe Mixon gets hurt, or maybe if the Texans are looking at life potentially after Joe Mixon and the Texans potentially are not in business together. Maybe if Joe Mixon doesn't play great, and let's just say Joe Mixon doesn't play great in 2024, and the Texans see his contract, decide to cut him, decide to trade him, let him go, you have a really nice solid young running back like Jalen Wright who could step up for this Houston Texans team. You know what I could kind of see it being like for this Texans team if they drafted Jalen Wright? I don't know if I 100% like this comparison just because a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs was a higher draft pick in the 1st round, but I think Jalen Wright has that kind of potential. It would remind me a lot like the Detroit Lions running back duo last year of having David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, has a way huger ceiling than Jalen Wright does, but I'm just saying you got a veteran running back like Joe Mixon compared to David Montgomery, and a veteran running back and Joe Mixon who's going to play well, just like David Montgomery did, but you kind of split their time just like Gibbs and Montgomery did last year. I really think that would be a solid idea for the Texans to have 2 really strong running backs. I think Jalen Wright would be a really good rookie to add in. I think outside of Jonathan Brooks, someone who went to Texas, I think Jalen Wright's one of the best available running backs in this draft. Let me know your thoughts on this Texans final mock draft in the comment section, and peace out. Go Texans.